This episode was brought to you by Raycon.
Initiating moisture.
Frozen. Whether or not you've seen it, you've definitely fucking heard it. I promise you that. Let It Go. A song that was everywhere. That song was more popular in America than the fucking Pledge of Allegiance, more well known than the Bible. Let It Go was a fucking phenomenon. And I'm happy to say in Frozen 2, there's nothing that's going to reach that level, so you won't be absolutely ass blasted by the same song ad nauseum and everything ever. That's not to say Frozen 2 doesn't have good songs, but it doesn't have nearly as good a songs as the first Frozen. The only two actual shine through songs in Frozen 2 are Show Yourself and Into the Unknown. Other than that, they're very forgettable musical numbers. Overall, the movie's not bad. By no means could you ever say Frozen 2 is a bad movie. It doesn't come close to the first movie, which I'd only just seen recently for the first time, and it was a good movie. But Frozen 2 doesn't even really come close to that. This does feel like more of a cash grab than an actual project of passion with something to tell you and something to teach you. It's a cute movie. The story is a real grasping at straws. It's about Elsa's power and its origin. It's a movie that doesn't even have an antagonist. It doesn't have a villain. Without spoiling anything, characters get separated. Characters end up in a very bad situation, a real fucking bad pickle. And it seems like it's going to be a really important moment where a lot of bad things are going to happen as a result, and there's this big obstacle they have to overcome that's going to have a lot of consequences. And for about 5 minutes of the movie, that's the case, until it is all peacefully resolved almost immediately after coming onto the screen. It's really underwhelming, because what's supposed to be and what seems to be a moment that's going to have a lot of build-up until it's solved is solved almost fucking instantly. It's a very low stakes kind of movie, which isn't necessarily bad in and of itself, but when the movie is talking about how high the stakes are, the elements are at odds and fighting, but then when you see the elements, they're just kind of minor inconveniences, and it's just, I don't know, underwhelming, for lack of a better term, especially when you have the scope of Elsa's powers and the extent of what she gets to use it for is just walking across water. It's a far cry from what you saw in the first movie. And there's some decisions, mainly towards the end of this movie, that I just can't believe made it to the final cut. This movie feels like it's missing 40-some minutes of actual content. Without spoiling anything to tell you what I mean, there is a scene where characters are separated, characters make choices that should have massive consequences, and for all of 5 minutes they do before it's just resolved peacefully. And nothing has really changed as a result of making these incredibly impulsive and without thinking type decisions that should have had dire consequences but didn't because they didn't feel like making more of the movie. And I think that's kind of what this movie's about. They wanted to make a movie that is passable for Frozen, but not great, and that's what it comes across as. Of course, the animation is beautiful, breathtaking at moments. There's beautiful scenes, especially during the Show Yourself musical number. All the things they show you look great, sound great. Of course, you're getting that with Disney animation. You already knew that was coming. But what it's missing is a soul. And to a kid, that's not going to matter. I get that. This movie is 100% geared towards children. If you're an adult fan of Frozen, you're probably not going to find a whole lot to like about this movie in comparison to the first. You'll probably end up a little disappointed unless you're really just a huge fan of the music and don't really care about much else, except the visuals, because the visuals are even better in this movie than the first one for sure. But, if you're going there expecting something like Frozen 1 had, you're not going to find it. They just came up with something that is good enough, not really anything great, which is kind of a shame, but to be expected. Hate him or love him, Olaf's in the movie. Kristoff has been reduced to just kind of being like a comedic relief presence occasionally. He doesn't really do anything at all. He's just kind of there. Then he has I bet if you put the script, if you printed out the script, you'd find maybe 15 lines from Kristoff across the entire movie. He's not really a huge player in this one at all. But that doesn't really matter that much either, because again, the focal point is on the relationship between Elsa and Anna and their little personal adventure into Elsa's origins. But anyway, plugging this in the moist meter, Frozen 2's, it's a 70%. It is a good movie, but it really is just a soulless one. I don't have a massive problem with it because, again, to a kid that's not going to matter, and I myself was not the hugest fan of Frozen when I saw it recently. I get for its time it was probably lightning in a bottle, some shit like no one expected to be as good as it was, but for me going into seeing it so many years later, I found it to just be ordinary, decent, good, not incredible or great. And this movie isn't even up to that level in my opinion. Not a bad movie though. A couple weeks ago I first mentioned how I upgraded to Raycon over the wired earphones for when I go to the gym, and while my physique may not indicate that I'm some type of meaty monster muscle man, I do go to the gym about 5 times a week, so these fucking Raycons are getting a workout as well. And I was just very concerned over my own personal safety with the wired earphones because these wires are exposed like a motherfucker and I don't want to get electrocuted at the gym during a rep. Also, they were just really inconvenient doing a rep and sometimes catching the wire and ripping that shit out of my ear. Overall, just significantly better than the wired earphones that I'm used to. They're much more comfortable. They sound better. They sound just as good as the other premium audio brands. Raycon's also less expensive than the other premium audio brands. So click the link in the description below and you can find a great deal on Raycon. They have their Black Friday deals coming up and I highly recommend them, so click the link below if you're interested.